Well, hi. It's Grandpa Ricky again. Looking a little scruffier than I did yesterday. Thank goodness June likes to pull my hair. Scruffier, but this hibernation is really interesting. So I'm going to read part 4 of No Mud, No Lotus. So here we go. This is really helping me. I don't know if it's helping you, but boy, oh boy, it's... When I get freaked out, I just coming back to my breath. Really helps. Having embraced a child for some minutes, a caring, attentive parent often discovers the cause of his baby's suffering. Maybe the baby was hungry or had a little fever. The same is true with our suffering. After we've cradled and embraced our suffering for some time, we can look deeply into it and begin to understand what has caused it and what's been feeding it. Understanding the nature of the situation makes it much easier to transform it. The next section is called Understanding the Pain. When we are in crisis or pain, we first need to take care of the immediate need, which is that crisis. Once our mindful energy has soothed our suffering, we can begin to look more deeply into its nature and the sources. And just as when we have a headache, acknowledging its existence and understanding its causes helps us to find the appropriate remedy for it. So understanding eases our pain and helps us transform it into compassion. The important mindfulness practice of cultivating understanding means, first of all, understanding suffering. The suffering inside us and the suffering of others. A human being without understanding is a human being without compassion, utterly alone, cut off and isolated. To connect with others, however, we first have to be willing to look deeply into ourselves. And that takes calm and the breathing, taking a breath in and exhaling, comes present, joining our head and our bodies and our heart. The next section is called The Pain of Our Ancestors. Some of our ill-being comes from hurt and pain in our own life, but some has been transmitted to us by our ancestors. Think of a stalk of corn that grows from seed. Each ear of corn, each leaf contains that initial seed. In every cell of the plant, that seed is there. And just as the plant of corn is the continuation of the seed of corn, you are the continuation of your parents. When you see a picture of yourself as a 5-year-old child, you may ask yourself, am I the same person as that child? The answer isn't yes or no. Your form, your feelings, your mental formations, your perceptions, and your consciousness are quite different from when you were that child. It's clear you weren't exactly that same person. But if you say that you are a completely different person, that's equally wrong. You and that child are with each other. Before my mother gave birth to me, she had a miscarriage. The child who didn't arrive that time, was he my brother or was he me? We aren't the same, but we aren't totally different. My feet have been transmitted to me by my ancestors, and when I walk with my own feet. But these feet are also theirs. I can see the hand of my mother in my hand. I can see the arms of my father in my arms. I am my parents' continuation. And boy, did I ever have trouble, decades of trouble accepting the fact. There are those who have lost their biological parents or never knew them and have no chance to connect with them in person. There are also people who grew up with their blood relatives whose parents are still alive, and yet they are unable to communicate with them. In all these situations, even if you don't have a regular interpersonal relationship with your parents or your ancestors, your body and mind contain their suffering and their hopes, as well as your own. So, if you have suffering in you and you don't know where it comes from, looking deeply, you may see that this is the suffering of your ancestors, handed down from one generation to the other because no one knew how to recognize, embrace, and heal it. It's not your fault, nor is it their fault. Many people are angry at their parents because of their suffering they experienced as children. I was like that. They say, "That man, I don't want anything to do with him." And you may believe your father is outside of you, but your father is also inside of you. Your father is present in every cell in your body. You can't remove your father from you. It's impossible. When he suffered, you suffered. And when you suffered, he suffers. Even if he's dead to this planet. I lost my place. Getting angry with your father, you're getting angry with yourself. The suffering of the parent is the suffering of the child. Looking deeply is a chance to transform and heal this suffering and to stop the cycle. So part of looking deeply into our suffering is to know that it is not ours alone. When we're able to embrace our suffering, we're also embracing our ancestors and the healing that goes back through generations. When we practice mindful breathing to know how to recognize, embrace, and transform our pain, we do it for them as well as for us. Then we can heal not only our own suffering and that of our ancestors, but we can also avoid transmitting this suffering to our loved ones, to our children, and to their children. I'm going to stop there. It's page 34. I hope you're finding these interesting. I'm making them for a huge number of people that I know are suffering, and maybe it'll help them, maybe it'll help you if I don't know you. And it's interesting that so many people are suffering now, and we know each other are suffering. And some of us are pretending we're not. But I know we all are. So please do what you can to help anybody, even people you don't like. I'm sad we're being cruel to one another. And I was happy to read a New York Times article where the guy was looking at joiners, people looking to see where we can agree, and rippers, people who are looking to see where we can create more fear and stress and suffering. It's a good article. I forget what it was. Anyway, please share your gifts.